Hey everyone, welcome back to another sketchbook tour. This sketchbook was a gift of my mom. It's pretty cool, super small sketchbook, which you can basically put into your pocket pretty easily. The mantra of this sketchbook was the next drawing is always the best, which I find is a pretty good mantra because sometimes we beat up ourselves about bad drawings, especially me. So it's good to remember. I like to use the sketchbook either way on going outside. Again, it was so small you could easily put it into your pocket, or just sitting on a couch and doing doodles and drawings. I always try to have a pen with me and also have the sketchbook with me. And I either way would do kind of like these imaginative drawings or thinking about any type of like entertainment design or fantasy stuff, just playing with forms and shape, or I would observe people in the outside world because I find this whole observation when it comes to drawing is very underrated. Yeah, this is my dad and this cat. And this little disclaimer, this whole sketchbook is basically filled with ink only. I should use some pencil here and there, but I more and more become a purist and I more and more believe into that I just enjoy going directly with ink because I do appreciate the mistakes I'm creating. And I feel like it makes it more unique and more vivid at some point. Here I drew my dad while he was driving. We were on the way to my brother to his birthday, so we had a very long drive with the car. It was kind of like hard to do and a little bit shaky. But I still love the drawing in a way because it has so much life in it. What I mostly use my travel sketchbook is for obviously drawing people outside. What I would do here, I would go and either way go for lunch. I have this like super cool Mexican place where I can sit inside and stalk the people outside. Perfect place for it. And then I try to make a habit out of it by just observing and trying to capture the essence of things. And I find that it's really important, especially pattern recognition. I often talk about it, that the pattern recognition part of learning is really important. On the left one, I was waiting at my barber to get a haircut, and everything else is just from imagination. I also want to say that it often gets forgotten in practices, just doing drawings from imagination. But I also don't want to advertise it like this thing that you need to do. I just feel that whenever we practice and try to get better in all these areas, we should not forget the muscle in your head that helps you to be creative and imaginative. What is also great about this sketchbook is that you could see the quality is so good that you can either way use a Copic or a brush pen as well, right? Because it's not bleeding through. So I really, again, love the sketchbook. I could really try whatever medium I want to. And those pages are the pages I really started to enjoy at some point because, as some of you maybe know, I do this whole ink-only imagination and all this stuff like for around 2 years now. And there was a point where I would really start to feel like, okay, I really start to understand this now, this like imagining something and then drawing it out. But also my mom just asked me like, what's up with the frog? The frog is basically just a placeholder whenever I feel like I don't know what to draw. And sometimes like also with the cigarette in the mouth, like I would do this specific shapes of a mouth or this mouth gesture, and then a cigarette would just perfectly fit. So that is the only reason why I do that. Oh, I remember this one. When I did my big samurai piece, I was already planning for the next one. I would constantly think about like scenes and stuff from imagination that I could like maybe draw bigger. So that is actually also the purpose of a sketchbook, right? It's kind of like thinking about a idea, something that you can scale up. Well, some of you maybe know I worked in games for years as an environment artist, and this is something that I would do very often in studio whenever I get a task, and whenever the pressure is very high, especially in AAA. You have to deliver something very strongly, very fast. You need to use your tools wisely, and especially using a sketchbook for quick sketches and establishing a first idea, first look is such a underrated skill, and it's so important because you can quickly just carve out, even in a meeting, when you're talking with a writer, talking with the art director, just scribbling out those ideas, because it's very, very powerful to just then go into either way Photoshop or directly jump into 3D and continue with the design in there. And those type of design exercises are something that I would teach my students when they join the program, because I find there are the most important things to learn. These first baby steps in design is manipulating shapes and form, but also communicating an idea. And it's not only about just adding things, right? But also how much do you add and where do you put it? Like design ratio, like design has like very different little nuances you have to think about when you actually build and craft a design. Yeah, and those type of phases, like all this stuff, and majority in the sketchbook is from imagination. You see like mostly these ugly drawings or things who are very inconsistent. Just commonly me trying different things, like leaving the pupil out or using a brush pen. And I would switch my mediums like on and off. And this is also something that I would always recommend, to not be afraid and try not to make like a beautiful sketchbook. More like really think about narrative, think about design, think about the things you want to do, the things about you draw. If it's fruits, plants, animals, whatever, communicate it, get it out. And sometimes you have a bad day and sometimes you have a good day. The most important thing is that you just get it out. Then you have it there and you can continue with everything else. Yeah, on this one on the left, I actually had an idea for kind of like another big ink drawing, kind of like a death wall, where it goes like upwards in perspective and like it's kind of like goes diagonally upwards. That would be pretty cool, but I just didn't have the time to do that. But the idea is still there. Making heads bigger, thinking about a character, thinking about like, okay, what could they do? And sometimes you just go nuts. And this is really what the sketchbook is for. And sometimes you have things where you realize, hey, I really understand those head shapes and head forms. The one on the right is actually quite recently. When I was in my hometown, I was walking through the forest and I had this like beautiful pathway and I just wanted to capture the essence of it. And I was actually drawing this standing, and you see these are just like lines, but I actually remember this and I now save this in my brain, and whenever I need a beautiful pathway or want to paint something like this, I have this. These are I think you call it crocus, right? So basically when you go into a cafe and you draw people there, I'm just doing that very often, where I just go out here in Berlin. It's perfect. We have a lot of cafes. You just grab a coffee, sit there, and you just observe people and you just draw them. Just doing that. I really love doing this. And I try to do that everywhere. Sometimes I have more time, sometimes I have less time, depending on how patient my family members are or the people in my life are with me sitting there for a while and drawing, because I can easily lose my head. Drawings from imagination, I could feel at some point they would get more and more better. I figured out that the more I would do extra studies from reference on the side, they would just potentially get better. Since then, I have the habit of drawing by ref, drawing imagination, drawing by ref, drawing from imagination. I always bounce them back. So whenever someone asks, I always say okay, I do both, because we need the reference the same as we need to try to imagine things. And yeah, you have ugly double pages. You have like things where you say like, oh, this is too much, this is too far, this is too bad. But we try not to give it a quality stamp. It's more like just the continuation of things. Like I drew the samurai piece, and then a few weeks later I tried to remember like, okay, how was actually the padding? I spent so much time on the padding, and then I barely could get it out again, thinking about it and just getting out the essence. I think this was in Switzerland. Just being out there. This was a bridge in Basel in Switzerland at my birthday. It was pretty nice to just do a little sketch here, just to capture the essence of the bridge and the whole like setting and everything. And those are also nice memories to have them in the sketchbook. Your loved ones, and you just kind of like just draw them eating and make them funny looks because you stalk them while they eat. Sometimes also just looking at people and then coming home and then just drawing what I've seen. It's still a bit hard sometimes, but I remember this one on the left. This was actually on my flight to THU. I remember I had a couple in front of me, and they would have the super suspicious look, like if I would plan something. And I just took this opportunity to sit down right away and draw them how they looked at me. It's just this essence of it. And at some point, you also start to do drawings where you think about certain characters. You try to give them a steampunk weapon or kind of like little gimmicks, and then you maybe try to make a design where you have a design language where everything is from a Rubik's Cube. It's really about this like continuation of your creativity. And that's why you always want to have the sketchbook with you, because I feel I'm so sad whenever I have the time outside to sit somewhere and I don't have my sketchbook with me. So again, that's why this is so perfect to have. And I think all these sketches now, there are basically sketches I did at THU. in Portugal. So basically, when I was sitting in these presentations, or very unsocial of me, but also like sitting in dinner with strangers, getting to know them, but also I wouldn't done my daily drawing. I would just like do this kind of like essence drawing of sitting with them together, and it's kind of like a nice memory, and I still remember the faces and the names. That is actually pretty cool. But also like there, you constantly surrounded by other artists, you're constantly surrounded by art, and you constantly feel inspired. That's also the reason why I personally have the desire to draw every day. I think this was a Ian McCaig presentation. He's always talking about how he fell off a cliff, so that's why I wrote How to Fall. And the good thing is, like, there are a lot of people like standing around and talking to each other, but also sitting, and you can literally sit down and just draw them, and no one would be mad about that. It's actually the opposite. People would just like be happy about then if you draw them, or if they look over your shoulder, or they would also start to draw. So that is actually always cool about THU. Yeah, and there were like, since the location is there on a half island, there are all these boats, and I remember I had lunch and I would have some time to start to draw the boat, but then my lunch came pretty quick. And yeah, the infamous drawing from imagination with frogs, of course. This would like the right side was actually quite recently, because I needed some space in the sketchbook. So I went again to the hometown where I grew up, and I would just sit there. And I actually just wanted to take a walk, but obviously I have my sketchbook with me, and I would started to draw this scene, like those mangroves, and they were just beautifully making these sea curves. So I just wanted to capture that. This was on the flight back from Portugal. It's a great exercise, by the way. So whenever you in a plane trying to draw these like kind of like fisheye lens drawings, it's perfect because no one can leave, right? So it's basically your motive for that moment, and you can just draw every little single detail, and you can take as much time as the flight is long. Yeah, and this was back in Berlin. Basically me standing on the street, drawing on the street standing, and sometimes I want to like do people look at me like, do I look weird? But I don't care anymore. I remember the pair on the left, it was like an older couple, and they both had these like old people gesture with their hands on the back. And other than that, just like people I would see, or I would try to imagine again. At some point, I also had the strong desire to tell more story. So I would actually also start to read more about like how to make comics, and how my most favorite storytellers would tell stories, and I would just look at it, and then I would try to tell my own story. And I would recommend this to anyone who wants to go in there. And I also want to say, like, whenever you want to tell stories, go outside, look what people are speaking about, look how they speak to each other, and then just capture it in your own way. Try to tell your own story, because life is so vivid with stories. So just go there, take a sketchbook, and just capture it, and have no expectation. I think those drawings was at the airport, because I was about to go to Korea, and also like waiting and to enter the plane. Perfect, because no one is leaving, so you can stalk people. Perfect location to draw someone. I should call this video How to Stalk Someone, by the way. I drew those girls on the flight to Korea. The infamous frog, of course, whenever I don't know what to do. And also sometimes like when you sit on the plane, the people next to you would obviously look what you draw. It's kind of like, okay, the people are looking at, but they just look for the first like 2 or 3 minutes, and then they're not interested anymore. So yeah, you just have to get over it. But I actually do like this double page. Sneakers are so hard to draw. I don't know why. Somehow they're so simple, but they're also so complex. And it's either way the thickness of it or the amount of elements they have, especially those like the fashionable sneakers. There is no way around. You need to practice everything. And this one is actually also from imagination. But I remember where I drew it, because I took an Airbnb when I went to Korea, and I did not know that I would have this amazing espresso bar in front of my Airbnb. Like literally, I walk out of the door. I was the first coming in there. So I would do my daily drawings every day in the morning in this espresso bar. Just sit there for an hour or 1.5 hours, and I would just order double espresso, have the best time because sun was shining. I would do my drawing, and they had amazing espresso in there. Yeah, and that's actually like day number 1, day number 2, day number 3. Like I would basically do these drawings every day. People in Korea, like I would just look at the people, how the people look, eat, observe. Big statement here, Starbucks loves Korea. At every corner, every street, there's a Starbucks. And you can go there. It's always full with people, and you can just draw them. You see, I even wrote there Starbucks in Songdong. I just love the dude in the middle. But yeah, like just people would sit there and they would work, and you can just observe them and draw them and just have fun. Hello, the captured vlog, capturing the essence of things, like even if it's just people walking around, standing around, and this is all what we want to do. This is all I want to do as an artist. So don't be afraid, like be open for mistakes. No one cares. It's your personal sketchbook. But you need to start to observe. You need to start to capture, and you need to figure out what are the things that you like. I would never thought that when I try to become a concept artist that I would go into a route where I would be more interested into capturing everyday life and looking at people and just drawing them with traditional media. I actually do love the one on the left because it's more like she has this really nice graphical read. But I also do remember the one on the right because I was so freaking tired. I was on my legs for 26 hours. I was sitting in Munich at the airport waiting for my last flight, and I fell asleep in between these drawings. So I started with the head, and there was this lady sitting in front of me with this giant iPad, and I fell asleep in between, and I was like, oh, what just happened? And then I was still sitting there, and everyone was waiting to enter the plane. I was like about to miss the plane, and I would just continuously let's draw this. But this drawing is a pure drawing of an essence of a lady. Yeah, and just have fun. Just have fun. On the right, the construction workers in front of my house. Was just looking at it and just capturing that, drawing certain things multiple times, just out of my head. On the next day, I think I drew this in a cafe. I just thought about a story, just like these little things, and it's not perfect, but it's the thing where you just try to think about stuff. And I think this was also a point where I realized, okay, my outside studies of, for example, animals in that case would really help me to benefit my drawings from imagination. Even though these birds are not perfect, I could start to tell stories with it. And I think that's really the power of having the switch of reference to imagination. Actually do really like this motif on the right. Funny story, actually. I had the opportunity to draw on a wall recently, so I got invited to a venue. I didn't know what was the venue about. I didn't know if it's a white wall, black wall, whatever. I took my sketchbook with me, luckily, because I got no information. I got there and it was basically a black wall in a dark room, and I got these white markers. So it's kind of like luminous in the dark. And I would just draw. I was like, okay, I need to draw something. I took my sketchbook, like, okay, I take this motif because that would fit perfect here. And it worked perfectly. Like, I was a bit nervous for the first stroke, but I think the drawing took me like 15 minutes. It's on my Instagram if you want to see the whole video about it. But it was also a great experience. But this is also why we have a sketchbook, right? It has our ideas in it. And whenever we need an idea, we want to come back to it. And this is basically the last page of it. Keep in mind to maybe always have like a little sketchbook with you, such as this one. This is, by the way, the brand of this sketchbook. Always keep in mind the next drawing is always the best. Subscribe and draw like.